If you have already watched this introductory information, you can skip ahead no more than 17 minutes. Hello, welcome. I am predicting that President Trump will die from a heart attack on December 26th, 2024. The date that this video is posted proves that this prediction is being made ahead of time, as does this time-stamped email and forensic notes PDF document. If you are skeptical for some reason, please email me and I will forward these to you. December 14th revealed adding 1+1 days. The star player in the Navy-Army game that Trump attended was player number 11. He scored the first touchdown on a 1-yard run, and it was in the first quarter, which also hinted at 1-1. There was one interception in the game, which is symbolic of the turning over of political power to the blue team after the predicted death of Trump's death. And the one interception was caught by player number 1 in the first quarter when the score was 7-0. And videos on this channel explain how Trump is a type for Joshua in the Bible, which is symbolized by the number 7. This 1+1 days from December 14th to December 16th is also following a 1+1 days from December 12th. As I will explain, the signs on December 12th, when it was announced that Trump had been named Person of the Year by Time magazine for the second time, on the same day that he rang the opening bell on Wall Street near Ground Zero, where 2 planes struck 2 towers on 9/11, indicated or revealed adding 2 days to December 12th. And so from December 12th, which I will talk about in this video, we received the signs that indicated adding 2 days to get December 14th, which was the day of the Army-Navy game, which revealed adding 1+1 days or 2 days to get December 16th. December 16th was another step in the trail of signs leading to Trump's predicted death, and the signs on December 16th revealed adding another 2 days to reach December 18th, also another step in the trail of signs. On December 16th, there was a school shooting in which the shooter killed 2 people. And the call into 911 was made by a second grader. The 2 deaths and the call made by the second grader hinted at the predicted deaths of 2 political leaders, Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. And so, from the day that Trump rang the opening bell on Wall Street near Ground Zero, where 2 planes struck 2 towers, when at the same time Time magazine announced that Trump had been named Person of the Year for a second time, it is 2 + 2 + 2 days to December 18th. The date of another extremely prophetic sign on Wall Street. This is astounding because it was through the 9/11 events in Lower Manhattan near Wall Street that God pointed to President George Washington, who was inaugurated on Wall Street, and George Washington was born on the date 2/22, which is why we received a second prophetic sign on Wall Street 2 + 2 + 2 days, after he was named the Person of the Year for a second time near where 2 planes struck 2 towers in God's warning of judgment and destruction for the nation on 9/11. This is also the prophetic reason why Trump is predicted to die before his second presidency, 2 days after Kamala Harris is predicted to die in a plane crash. This is also why the call made to 911, which hints at 9/11, was made by the second grader in the shooting that killed 2 people. On 9/11, 2 planes struck 2 towers near Wall Street. Trump is predicted to die 2 days after it is predicted that Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash in the 8 + 8 + 8th state to join the Union. The name Donald J. Trump is equal to 888 in English gematria, and the name of Jesus in Greek is equal to 888 in Greek gematria. The name Trump is equal to 88 in simple English gematria. A equals 1, B equals 2, C equals 3. Trump is predicted to die 8 days after the second prophetic sign on Wall Street that occurred on December 18th. On 9/11, Trump called into the local TV news station and inadvertently trumpeted that his tower on Wall Street had become the tallest tower in Lower Manhattan. In the events of 9/11 is the story of the heroes of the 88th floor. The Tribute in Lights art installation that commemorated the Twin Towers was made up of 88 searchlights. According to Wikipedia, there are 88 places in America named Washington. Through the 9/11 events, God pointed to George Washington, who was inaugurated at the founding of the nation on Wall Street, after which he marched down Wall Street to Trinity Chapel, where he then consecrated the nation to God, saying that if the nation were to ever turn away from God, it would lose its divine protection and blessings. God's divine protection and blessings were temporarily removed on 9/11 as a warning for America, and God confirmed this through the fact that Trinity Chapel was the only building at Ground Zero to have survived the falling debris and did not even suffer a broken window due to the uprooted sycamore tree that sheltered the chapel. Today, outside what is now nicknamed the Miracle Chapel, there is a 20-foot-high bronze statue of the roots of this tree to commemorate this. These events on 9/11 pointed to God's warning in Isaiah chapter 9, verse 11 in the Bible for ancient Israel when it was raided by the ancient Assyrians who uprooted the, quote, sycamore trees, unquote, and caused, quote, the bricks have fallen, unquote. The collapse of the towers on 9/11 engendered a small earthquake that cracked the foundation of Federal Hall on Wall Street, where President Washington was inaugurated at the founding of the nation. It symbolized the foundation of America, which is the God of Israel and the God of the Bible, Jesus Christ, being cracked. Trump's first election campaign and presidency were synonymous with his border wall of security. The word Trump in archaic English means trumpet, or the sounding of a trumpet. Before the walls of security of Jericho collapsed in God's judgment, as described in the Bible, the Israelites blew trumpets. On 9/11, Trump called into Channel 9 News and trumpeted that his tower on Wall Street had become the tallest tower in Lower Manhattan, and Wall Street was named after the 9-foot-high wall of security that the Dutch built to keep the British and the Indians out. God repeats a number 3 times for emphasis of its symbolic meaning, and the name Wall Street is equal to 45 plus 45 plus 45. The 45th president's first election campaign and the 45th presidency were synonymous with America's southern border wall of security. Trump was shot in the ear as he was talking about the border wall of security. The border wall of security collapsed after the 45th president left office. Trump is predicted to die on the 20th anniversary of the Indian Ocean tsunami that killed 220,000 people. On 9/11, a total of 220 stories collapsed as each tower was 110 stories high. After 9/11, America sent its military into Afghanistan, and on the 20th anniversary, its operations there dramatically collapsed in another warning of God's impending judgment and destruction of America. The inverse of the number 45, in other words, 1 divided by 45, is equal to 0.0222. This is why the 45th president will die on the 20th anniversary of the 220,000 deaths in the Indian Ocean tsunami, 2 days after the death of the vice president, who is of Indian descent. As a result of these 2 deaths, the 44th president, who grew up in Indonesia for 4 years, will become the president again. And the tsunami 20 years ago was triggered by a magnitude 9 earthquake in Indonesia. 45 is the 9th triangular number. In a triangle of numbers, the last number in the 9th row is 45. Obama was inaugurated in 2009, and he will serve a second presidency that will have skipped the 45th presidency. The inverse of 45 is 0.0222, and exactly 222 months after the events of 9/11 that pointed to Washington, who was born on the date 222, was the 45th president's Oval Office speech regarding the CVD disease that ended precisely as the clock on the live TV news screen ticked 9:11 p.m. Trump's CVD disease speech was on the same day that the begins with a W, ends with an HO declared that it had become begins with a pen, ends with a demic, on the same day that the first professional athlete tested positive who played for the team from the 45th state, the Utah Jazz, and jazz is a genre of music that typically uses trumpets. Exactly 9 months after Trump's CVD disease Oval Office speech was the day of Trump's Oval Office speech regarding the approval of the thing by the begins with an F, ends with a D and A on that day. The approval of the thing was exactly 9 months and 222 months after the events of 9/11 that pointed to the inauguration of Washington on Wall Street, which was named after the 9-foot-high wall of security, and Washington was born on the date 222. The second prophetic sign on Wall Street on December 18th was 2 + 2 + 2 days after Trump was named Time's Person of the Year for the second time, while he rang the opening bell on Wall Street near where 2 planes struck 2 towers. The top news story on December 18th was how the Dow lost 1,123 points. 1,123 is the 188th prime number, and God uses this number to point to H188 in Strong's Hebrew Concordance, which is the Hebrew word that means woe! It is used in the Bible in the context of extreme judgment from God. The events of 9/11 that pointed to President George Washington occurred exactly 188 years after the only other time a foreign enemy attacked the nation's capital. On 9/11 in 1813, the British landed at Washington's Mount Vernon estate and then proceeded to burn down the Capitol building and the White House, but not before First Lady Dolly Madison famously rescued the portrait of George Washington. The Wall Street stock market loss on December 18th that pointed to the number 188 occurred 8 days before the predicted death of Trump. Trump's death will symbolize the long-last blast of the trumpets by the Israelites before the walls of security of Jericho collapsed in God's judgment. Trump's death will be the last Trump sign, and it will symbolize the collapse of America's walls of security and the beginning of the destruction of the nation. The loss on Wall Street on December 18th was blamed on the decision and statements by the 16th chairman of the Federal Reserve. The 16th president, Abraham Lincoln, was assassinated, as will Trump be assassinated. The name Abraham is equal to 44 in simple English gematria. Trump's death, the last trumpet sign, will be 4 plus 4 days after the loss on Wall Street that was blamed on the 4 times 4th chairman of the Federal Reserve, who was appointed to the Federal Reserve Board of Governors by the 44th president. After Trump's death and the last trumpet sign, the 44th president will become the president again. As outlined in the 20th Amendment, Obama will become a quote-unquote temporary president. This is why Trump, the 45th president, will die on the 20th anniversary of the tsunami that killed 220,000 people. The inverse of the number 45 is the number 0.0222. Prior to the date 12/12, December 12th, 2024, God pointed to December 12th, 2024, related to the death of President Trump. In other words, there are other videos on this channel that are predicting that President Trump would die on December 12th. And as I will explain, these videos and their analyses are 100% correct. The analysis is 100% correct, and these extremely important videos must be watched. The signs that occurred on December 12th that were expected in advance of December 12th confirmed all of the analysis, and as I will explain, the signs revealed adding 2 more days to get December 14th. These other videos that predicted that President Trump would die on December 12th were posted long before December 12th, and I have the email and forensic notes PDF document to document that December 12th was known many weeks before December 12th. On December 12th, 12/12, Trump rang the ceremonial opening bell on Wall Street, and Time magazine announced that Trump had been named Person of the Year for the 2nd time. As explained in the America is Out of Time video and the America is Out of Time video, these signs on December 12th, 12/12, including Trump's ringing of the bell near Ground Zero and Trump being named Person of the Year by Time for the 2nd time, pointed to 9/11. When 2 planes struck 2 towers that collapsed. Trump is predicted to die 2 days after these signs that included Trump being named Person of the Year by Time for the 2nd time, and Trump being near Ground Zero on Wall Street to ring the opening bell. On 9/11, Trump called, as in trumpeted, to the local news station. The name Trump in simple English gematria is equal to 88, and the events on 9/11 included the story of the heroes of the 88th floor, the Tribute in Lights art installation that commemorated the Twin Towers was made up of 88 searchlights. According to Wikipedia, there are 88 places in America named Washington. George Washington was inaugurated on Wall Street. Trump will die on the anniversary of Washington's death, exactly 2,700 months after George Washington died. In 1 Kings 20:30, in the Bible, it was 27,000 men who died when a wall of security collapsed on them in God's judgment. Trump's first election campaign and his presidency were synonymous with his border wall of security, which collapsed in God's judgment after he left office. Trump was shot in the ear in an assassination attempt when he was speaking about the border wall of security. The name Donald J. Trump is equal to 888 in English gematria, and Trump is equal to 88. The name Trump is equal to 88 in simple English gematria. A equals 1, B equals 2, C equals 3. Trump is predicted to die on December 14th, 5 plus 5 days before Kamala Harris is predicted to die in a plane crash next to the I-55 highway in the 8th plus 8 plus 8th state to join the Union in St. Louis. The area code for St. Louis is 314. In Exodus 3:14, God spoke to Moses from a burning bush. Harris's fiery plane crash is predicted to be into Bush Stadium in the area code 314. Trump is predicted to die exactly 314 plus 314 plus 314 months after he was born. And God emphasizes a symbolic meaning of a number by repeating it 3 times. In this very important video that you are about to watch, there will be mention of signs, patterns, and connections that point to the date 12/12, December 12th, 2024. This analysis is 100% correct, and this will be proven to be correct when Trump will die on December 14th, 2 days after 12/12, when he was named Time's Person of the Year for the 2nd time. Also, make sure that you watch all of the videos that predict that Trump will die on December 12th. They are all 100% correct, and they are all very important. Hello, welcome. This video is predicting that President Trump, Donald Trump, will die on December 12th, 2024. The date that this email is composed, as we can see, is December 11th. It was learned on December 11th that Trump would ring the New York Stock Exchange morning bell on December 12th. The date that this video is posted proves that this prediction is being made ahead of December 12th, but also the time-stamped email and forensic notes PDF document here prove that this prediction is being made ahead of time. If you are skeptical for some reason, please email me and I will forward these to you. And also, I have made a number of other videos that were posted with post dates long before this date here, December 11th. So let's get into this amazing prophetic sign here. It is the sign that we could expect on the day of Trump's death. This ringing of the New York Stock Exchange morning bell, it's amazing. I think this is the sign that would naturally occur on the day of Trump's death. Let me explain. It occurred to me as I was speaking in a video yesterday that 12/12, the date, is symbolic of the 11th hour turning into the 12th hour of darkness. This was the symbolism in the 9/11 warning in New York City. Let me explain. On 9/11, it was Flight 11 with a crew of 11 people that flew into the Twin Towers that looked like a giant 11 in New York State, the 11th state to join the Union. And New York City is made up of 11 letters, and Flight 11 also departed from Governor's Island, on which the first governor, John Winthrop, lived, and he led his 11-ship flotilla of the Pilgrims over to their promised land. The reason for all of this is that Jesus coined the phrase the 11th hour, which referred to the last hour of daylight before darkness, and in English is an idiom that means last chance. Time is running out, as in last chance for America to repent and turn back to God, or else judgment and destruction. And so this 12/12 date is symbolic of America entering the 12th hour of darkness and destruction, which is why Trump will die on this date, because Trump is symbolic of God's trumpet. In archaic English, the word trump means trumpet or the sounding of a trumpet. And before the walls of security collapsed on Jericho, the Israelites blew trumpets and blew them for one long last trumpet blast. This death of Trump will be the last trumpet sign before the walls of security will collapse. This, incidentally, is why his election campaigns and presidency were synonymous with his border wall of security, and why the southern border wall of security collapsed after he left office. It's pointing to the book of Joshua, when the walls of security collapsed after the Israelites blew trumpets. And so that's the symbolism with this last trump sign on the date 12/12. It's the 12th hour of darkness and the walls of security collapsing and destruction of America. So Trump's ringing the bell in New York City near Ground Zero, which is where the stock exchange is in Lower Manhattan, on 12/12, confirms this. Because, well, through the 9/11 events, God pointed to the stock exchange also. Because God pointed to Washington's walk down Wall Street from Federal Hall, where he was inaugurated. And Wall Street divides the Trinity Chapel side from the stock exchange building on the other side. I explained this in a number of videos, and I might play the clip to explain that in a second. Well, anyway, on 9/11, Trump called into Channel 9 News and trumpeted inadvertently that his tower at 40 Wall Street had become the tallest tower in Lower Manhattan. In Hurricane Sandy, 40 Wall Street was flooded. And in the Bible, the flood waters increased for 40 days. Hence why Trumpet's Tower on Wall Street, and it being number 40, and also Wall Street was named after the 9-foot-high wall of security that the Dutch built to keep the British and the Indians out, and that's why Trumpet called into Channel 9 News. Okay, this 12/12 date, 2024, is also exactly the 6 plus 6 plus 6th prime number of months. In other words, 61 months, which is the 18th prime number, and 18 is 6 plus 6 plus 6, and the number 666 is associated with the Antichrist in Bible prophecy. This 12/12 date will be exactly the 6 plus 6 plus 6th prime number of months. And by the way, the Antichrist was born in the year 61 months, right? 6 plus 6 plus 6th prime number of months after Trumpet's speech in New York City at the New York Economic Club to kick off his 2020 campaign. On 11/12 in 2019, I should say, yes, which was the day of his New York Economic Club speech, 11/12/2019, the Dow closed unchanged to within 6 decimal places. That's unheard of. How does the Dow close unchanged to 6 decimal places? Okay. Now, this was the third time in history that the Dow closed unchanged since the decimalization of the Dow. The first time the Dow closed unchanged after the decimalization of the Dow was 101 days after 9/11. This day that it closed unchanged to within 6 decimal places was the day after 11/11, because the days that the Dow closed unchanged were 1111 in 2019 and 1112 in 2019. And 1111 in 2019 was 101. Again, the first time that the Dow closed unchanged after the decimalization of the Dow was 101 days after 9/11, which, by the way, hints at 11 and Flight 11 with a crew of 11 that flew into the Twin Towers. It looked like a giant 11, 110 stories high, which also 101 hints at. In New York State, the 11th state. Okay, so the date 11/11, 2019 was the 101st anniversary of the end of World War I at 11 a.m. on the date 11/11. And again, 101 hints at 11. So again, the date 11/11 in 2019 was 101 years after the end of World War I at 11 a.m. on the date 11/11. 11/11 2019 was also 11 days after the historic barge on the Niagara River moved for the first time in 101 years. This is a major prophetic sign that I explain in other videos, but it is a wound up alarm clock, and when the barge will crash over Niagara Falls, which God was pointing to with this movement of this barge 11 days before this date 11/11, and it being stuck 101 years earlier at the end of World War I, it was a sign pointing to Noah's flood symbolism. The barge was involved in the most dramatic rescue in the history of Niagara Falls. The barge is symbolic of Noah's Ark. The barge is sitting on the precipice of the falls. The water moving over the falls is symbolic of water moving over the earth in the account of the flood. And the Niagara Falls engenders a perennial rainbow, God's sign regarding judgment in the account of the flood. Okay, so anyway, there's tons more to November 11th, 2019, which I'll leave it here. I'll leave it at that. Now, 11/11 in 2019 and 11/12 in 2019, the Dow closed at 27,691.49 points on both dates. And again, it goes beyond that because it went to 6 decimal places. But in 1 Kings chapter 20, verse 30, we have the death of 27,000 men when the wall of security collapsed on them in God's judgment. So this is a parallel or similar to the walls of security collapsing on Jericho. That's why this number 27,691. This separates this and isolates the number 691. But before we do that, let's go to the decimal place, 49. 49 is 7 times 7, and that's a hint at Joshua and the walls of security collapsing and them blowing trumpets before the walls collapsed, when they marched around the walls of security 7 times while blowing 7 trumpets. 7 priests blowing 7 trumpets. I should say trumpets. Okay, so now we've really isolated the number 691. G691 in Strong's Greek Concordance is the word meaning to be idle, inactive, lazy. This describes the American church, because the main theme of God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections, which is only being explained on this channel. And this is why, because this is the channel that is talking about the true main theme of God's signs, which is judgment warning for the church, specifically the American church. And even more specifically, the American evangelical church, which God is very, very displeased with. But as Jesus said to the church of Laodicea, which is the American church, God reproves whom he loves. But to this church, Jesus said that he is not inside it and is knocking at the door, and it is lukewarm, in other words, idle, inactive, and lazy. And because of this, Jesus wants to vomit this church out of his mouth. Rather than make this video another explanation of the doctrine that Jesus said he hates in Revelation chapter 2, which is the doctrine and beliefs of the American evangelical church, that Jesus said he is coming to make war on with the sword of his mouth on those that teach and have the works that are a product of this doctrine, I will refer you to arguably the most important video on this channel if you are a Christian, quote unquote, the 23 church signs video on this channel. But obviously the wise person, when this prediction comes to pass, will recognize that they need to watch every minute of every video on this channel, including the 23 church signs video. 666 days after the Dow closed unchanged to within 6 decimal places was the Feast of Trumpets on September 7th, 2021. Another date that was known ahead of time, and one reason being this connection here. On this day, there was a 7.0 earthquake. The walls of security collapsed on Jericho in the book of Joshua due to an earthquake. Archaeology proves this. And they marched around, led by Joshua, the Israelites marched around once per day for 7 days. And then on the 7th day, they marched around 7 times while blowing 7 trumpets. The border wall of security is symbolic of the wall of security of Jericho. And that's why earthquakes in Mexico have been prophetic and symbolic of the book of Joshua. And that's why on this day we had a 7.0 earthquake in Mexico. And also incidentally, the shape, the geography on a map of Mexico is in the shape of a shofar horn, the type of trumpets that the Israelites would have used when the walls of security collapsed. In fact, the mouthpiece of this shofar is the Yucatan Peninsula, and recently Hurricane Beryl, which was extremely prophetic, hit the mouthpiece of the Yucatan before hitting the U.S., and it hit the Yucatan with 110 mile per hour winds, and Joshua, who led the Israelites, died at the age of 110, which is incidentally why the 110-story towers collapsed on 9/11. Okay, so they're on this Trumpets Day, 666 days after the Dow closed unchanged to within 6 decimal places on the day of this massive church judgment warning sign that was communicating that the church is idle, inactive, and lazy, was this 7.0 earthquake on the Feast of Trumpets. And in Mexico, which is symbolic of Joshua, the book of Joshua, and walls of security collapsing, and this earthquake killed 1 person, one of a number of signs that killed 1 person, including other earthquake signs for that matter, that hint at the death of Trump, when a light post, which was symbolic of Jesus, collapsed on him. On this same day, the Mexico Supreme Court ruled to legalize abortions. Also on this day, 1,500, as in 153 fish caught in the net in Jesus' last miracle, which is symbolic of the end of the age of fishing for men and the church age. In other words, this is a church sign. Okay, there was $1,500 worth of grapes that were stolen in the middle of the night from a vineyard owned by an evangelical church in Liberty, Missouri. Okay, let's go through this. Grapes and a vineyard are very symbolic in the Bible of the church. Jesus said he is coming like a thief in the night. These grapes were stolen in the middle of the night. The grapes, of course, are being used by this church for their communion. It was a judgment against the evangelical church, and the national church of evangelicals is symbolized through this because, for one thing, it was in Liberty, Missouri. This hints at the liberty of the church and God's people being taken away in the period of the Antichrist, and persecution from the Antichrist, which serves to compel these otherwise idle, inactive, and lazy, quote-unquote, Christians from doing something. And why don't they do anything? because of their phobia regarding works, because of their heretical Gnostic doctrine, the Nicolaitan doctrine of our day that Jesus said he hates and is coming to make war with the sword of his mouth, this doctrine that tells them that they are once saved, always saved, a phrase that was only used in the Bible once when James said, "For you see, a person is not saved by faith alone, but by through their works." Now, don't get me wrong. This is the deception that the evangelicals will use. They'll say, well, you can't earn your salvation. No, your salvation is a gift, but you need to take hold of it. You need to grab the lifeline. You don't swim to shore by yourself, but you do need to grab hold of the lifeline. You need to obey. You need to be obedient. You need to fear God. God is looking for those who fear him. There are two parts to salvation. Abraham was deemed righteous when he believed and trusted God's promise, but then God asked him to sacrifice his only son, and Abraham went through it, trusting and demonstrating his faith through his actions. And then God, through the angel, said to Abraham, "Stop, don't harm the boy, for now I know that you fear me." In other words, God didn't know beforehand that Abraham feared him. Furthermore, neither did Abraham until he was actually called to demonstrate or actualize his faith through a doing. This actualization of one's faith through works typically involves risk and sacrifice, as in not being able to travel and go on vacations if you don't take the thing, or also losing your job, of course. The last warning from Peter was, be wary of those who twist the writings of Paul to their own destruction, which is exactly what evangelicals do today. They isolate certain passages of Paul that not only conflict flatly with the teachings of Jesus and the writings of John and Peter, but other passages by Paul, because they interpret the teachings of Jesus through the writings of Paul instead of the other way around. Paul was talking about the works of the Mosaic law, and specifically he was focused on circumcision. Jesus is coming like a thief in the night, and if the master of the house knew what part of the night, he would not allow the thief to break into the house. This is because Jesus forbid pastors. Jesus is speaking about pastors. He's coded it in language here. Jesus is the thief. And he says that if the master of the house knew what part of the night he was coming, he would not allow the thief to break into the house. This speaks, and this comes in context after Jesus said the most quoted verse in the Bible, which is that no one knows the day, a verse that's quoted out of context and mistranslated because the word know there is different than the word know that occurs just prior to that in another passage. This word know means more precisely, no one has seen the day. And right after that, Jesus spoke about Noah, who did know. And for that matter, so did Lot. God's servants knew. Furthermore, God says in Amos that that he does nothing before his prophets and servants know. Amos 3:7, for the Lord God does nothing without revealing his secret to his servants, the prophets. I'm not saying I'm a prophet, but you get the idea. God does not do anything without revealing to his servants, including Noah and Lot. Also, Revelation 3:3 says that Jesus speaking, therefore repent, otherwise you will not know the time that I am coming. He says, or otherwise I will come at an hour you will not expect. Therefore, Jesus says to watch. Very sorry. because this is very important. Jesus says to watch for what? The timing of the Lord. Watch, otherwise, therefore, you will not know the hour at which I am coming, and therefore, if one is watching, they will know the hour that he is coming, obviously, which contradicts these people's interpretation of no one knows the day or the hour, when right after that, in brackets, he mentions Noah, who obviously did know the day and the hour. Okay, in other words, the Lord hid the knowability of knowing for a purpose. And it is to exactly do what he's describing here. Also in this context, he's speaking of the master of the house, which are these quote-unquote pastors, which Jesus strictly forbid. Which is why they are, I don't want to say they are the enemy of Jesus, but there was one thing that Jesus got violently angry over, which was the turning of his church, which was the monetization of his church. In his first coming, he got violently angry over this. Anyway, I did it like I said. I didn't want to make this video about theology again. But make sure you watch the 23 church signs. Jesus strictly forbid teachers. There's only one teacher, Jesus. And as John said, we do not need a teacher. We do not need to be taught, for we have the Holy Spirit, as John said. And we have the scriptures, and we have fellowship. We do not need pastors, especially paid pastors who put on a performance for 45 minutes to an hour once a week and get paid. Pastors are the problem. I would love to elaborate, but I will in the 23 church signs video. But it is now more dangerous than ever to be following a pastor. And the word Nicolaitane means ruling over the laity. Jesus isn't only angry and coming to make war with the pastors, the Nicolaitans, but also the sycophant followers of the pastors, who trusted their pastor when they said that the thing isn't the mark of the Antichrist, which is exactly why it was the thing. Because their pastors told them it wasn't the thing. Because Jesus hates the Nicolaitans. And that's why the pastors are the biggest proponents of the doctrine, the false doctrine of imminence. And no one knows the day, etc. And if you were to actually say anything to the effect, you would get in a church, in one of these pastors' houses, you would get the evil eye and probably be asked to leave, like I have been, of course. That was when I was naive in the very beginning, talking about these sorts of things to people who I would want to talk about it with. No, that's not acceptable. The pastors have a 100% monopoly on information. They are dictators, just like socialist dictators. They produce an immature citizenry, and they cut off the body of the church. That's why Paul said, if someone is speaking and another person says, is inspired by what the person is saying, let the person who is speaking be silent and let the person speak. When do you ever see that in a church? If someone were to do that, stand up while the pastor on the stage, on a platform and a podium getting paid for his performance, someone were to get up and start speaking and say, you know what, I've got something to say regarding what you're saying there, brother. Whoa, would you be escorted out of the church immediately and probably asked to never return? It's wicked. And those that call them or think of themselves as part of the freedom movement, but support pastors and a pastor system of assembly, in my opinion, you are extreme hypocrites. Okay, let's just finish this video here, because the grapes were stolen in Liberty, Missouri, which hints at Michelle Obama, who will become the temporary president and make Barack Obama her vice president, and then she will step down and he will become the president. And this will all be after it is predicted that Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash, after it is predicted that President Trump will die. But I loved getting into this here. This is this amazing prophetic sign that illustrates through God's prophetic signs that the doctrine of imminence is false. It's wicked. It's deception from Satan, the doctrine of imminence. And the prediction being made in this video will prove this. And this is the purpose of this prediction. Make no mistake, I know far better than you the reason and purpose for this prediction that is from God. And it is to prove what I have just said about the doctrine of imminence being false and wicked deception from Satan. And what I have said about pastors who promote the doctrine of imminence. Because if the master knew at the time that Jesus was coming, they would not allow their house to be broken into. It's a symbolic metaphor for the role that pastors play, which is not sanctioned by Jesus. The ringing of the bell will produce an audible sound that will be broadcast across the nation. This is an amazing symbolism here, right? The ringing of the bell, Trump is going to ring the bell on the morning of December 12th, the date he's predicted to die, on the last Trump sign, and it'll be pointing to or symbolic of the last trumpets, like I'm about to write in a sentence here. The bell ringing will be symbolic of the trumpets that were blown before the walls of security of Jericho collapsed. So the ringing of the bell will be symbolic of the sounding of the last trump before the walls of America collapse in God's judgment. This will be 5 days after the bells rang at the Notre Dame Cathedral, 5 years after the roof fire, which was symbolic of judgment warning for the church, because God has been using these church roof destruction signs to hint at the church, because the roof of the church is symbolic of the church because of Pentecost. On the first Pentecost of the church age, it was tongues of fire that came down on the disciples in the upper room. That's why these church roof fires and tornadoes that rip off the roofs. I'm going to actually go into a number of these signs in the 23 church signs video, okay? Okay, now here is just an image. Okay, here is a screenshot from marketwatch.com. This is the dates where I'm showing you. The Dow closed unchanged. All right, there's a big headline too. That's how I knew about it. The headlines in the news were that the Dow closed unchanged. Here we can see the 691, G691, to be idle, inactive, lazy, the American church, in other words. The Church of Laodicea that thinks it is in need of nothing because of its doctrine, once saved, always saved, and that's why they don't fear the Lord, and the Lord is seeking those who fear him. But also what's interesting too here is the high of the day that Trump spoke at the New York Economic Club, because the high gives us 27,770. That's amazing beyond words, okay? Because again, 27,000 is a parallel with the walls of security collapsing on Jericho, because 20,000 men died in the wall that collapsed on them in God's judgment. But also, so we isolate that, that gives us 770. But what is 770? It's 7 times 110. Joshua died at the age of 110, and he led the Israelites around the walls of security once per day for 7 days. And then on the 7th day, they marched around 7 times while blowing 7 trumpets. So it's an amazing number, 7 times 110 right here. But also 86, I just realized this just right now. This 86 number in the Hebrew concordance is the word for to kneel to Satan, and in the Greek concordance is the word for Hades, hell, which would be appropriate here given after the collapse of the walls of security, the Antichrist rising to power. That's amazing. Okay, wow. It just occurred to me. Okay, so what I left out of this is that on December 11th, it was also learned that the day after, on December 12th, so on December 11th, it was learned that Trump would ring the bell on the morning of December 12th, and on December 11th, it was learned that Trump would be named Person of the Year on December 12th by Time magazine. So these two things were learned on the 11th, and these two things will come to pass on the 12th. This hints at the 11th hour going into the 12th hour, which is what I just explained earlier which was what was symbolized, communicated by God through the 9/11 events, because Jesus coined the phrase the 11th hour. Okay, this is amazing beyond words. Now, the thing is, it's Time magazine we are talking about. This is stunning confirmation from God that this is symbolic of time, as in the 11th hour going into the 12th hour. This 12th hour beginning on the date 12/12, the 12th hour of darkness and destruction of America. That's why Trump is named Person of the Year by Time on the same day, on the date 12/12, that he will ring the bell, which will be this sound broadcast across the nation, that time is up. Ding, 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 ding. No more time. America's walls of security will now collapse in God's judgment. Believe me, I know far better than you how the prediction made in this video was derived. And more importantly, I know far better than you why the righteous Christian God of the Bible has given me a voice through this prediction. If you are a quote-unquote Christian or Muslim, this prediction was not learned through a demon. Be warned that blaspheming the Holy Spirit is the unforgivable sin. If you are a New Ager or New Spirituality person, this prediction was not learned through somehow tapping into the supposed universal collective consciousness. If you are a conspiracy theorist, this prediction was not learned through figuring out a supposed code that the Illuminati and Satanists are using. This prediction was learned through the Bible and through watching carefully the Lord's prophetic signs, which Jesus commanded all Christians to do. Besides proving that Jesus Christ is the Lord, the reason why God has given me a voice through this prediction is to prove that the controversial things that I am saying in the videos on this channel are the truth. Therefore, a wise person will want to watch all of the videos on this channel. What I will also do is create a video or two that summarizes some of the controversial things that the Lord will prove to be true when the prediction being made in this video comes to pass. I will leave links to these must-watch videos in the description box below this video. Again, the purpose of this prediction, that is from God, is to prove these things that I will talk about. And therefore, it would be foolish to not watch the videos that I will leave links for in the description box below this video. Aliens and UFOs are demons masquerading as aliens and UFOs. Most people's spiritual experiences are demonic deception, especially if they are not a true follower of Christ. In the last days, many people who claim to be a follower of Christ will have spiritual experiences that are in reality demonic. God became a man and died a horrible death at the hand of the ruler of this world, Satan, and then defeated death for you, so that you too can overcome death, which is the price that must be paid for sin. It is time to repent, which means to change one's ways and turn to God and become a disciple of Jesus. Please leave a like and upvote the video, and once this prediction has come to pass, share this video with everyone you know, and more, don't stop sharing it everywhere in social media. It is essential that everyone immediately read the homepage of my website, TrumpPrediction.com. If you are watching this on the YouTube platform, please note that not all of the videos are on YouTube. You need to switch to the Odyssey.com or Rumble.com channel, and do it now in case you aren't able to later.